Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth clothing for all kinds of weather, all kinds of terrain, all kinds of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. Got to give a quick shout out to Patreon and host of the Generations to Hunt podcast, Joe Davis. He's had a pretty rough season. He's out in the late season with his recurve and was able to take down a doe. Super pumped for Joe. Can't wait to do that myself. Congratulations again. Good job, Joe. This is going to be the last week for you guys to sign up for Patreon to get in on any of the Q4 giveaways from our great partners at Huntworth, Latitude, Lucky Bucks, Spartan Forge, Genesis 3D, Kanadi, Zinger, and Big Shot Targets. Genesis 3D just came up with a code just for Patreons. So if you're looking at getting some things that you didn't get in your stocking and you want to save some coin on that, you can sign up for Patreon, and he's got a code specifically for that. Check him out at genesis3d.com. Big Shot Targets, they wanted me to remind you. So if your club or your archery shop is looking for any new targets, at ATA, they're going to have a bunch of the Ironman 48s and a couple of the Vegas 600s on sale, looking to move. So they'd be great for your club, your shop, or maybe one of the lanes in your basement. If you got a big place, definitely want to check those out. Go on to bigshottargets.com, and you can save some money with code BCP. You can save 10% over there at Big Shot. But all of our partners give away something every quarter, not just to us. We're giving back, and our Patreons are the lifeblood of this podcast. We're creating a great community through Marco Polo. You can check that out at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, or you can just click on the link on our website or Instagram. But this podcast is, again, about building that community through giving back to veterans. The hunting industry, people that hunt, I think, have the biggest hearts and are so empathetic to veterans and first responders. And Andrew here is no different with the outdoor driven nonprofit, getting veterans out there, saving lives, affecting people, changing lives. You guys are going to love this podcast. Pretty heartfelt. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, and coming at you with a little bit different take today. We got Andrew Comtois here with Outdoor Driven, talking about his nonprofit. I know a lot of people out there that listen to the podcast. A lot of our Patreons are all veterans. It seems like, that's one thing for hunters in the outdoors is like there's nobody that doesn't have a soft spot for veterans. And I don't see, he didn't come on here eating crayons. Maybe he just finished it up, but he is a fellow Marine. That's where we get a bad rap. Like, we couldn't possibly have any brains in our head to do kind of what we signed up to do. But I'll give you this. I've had enough conversations with him. He is a jarhead, and
True.
So, how's everything for you? How's everything going, Andrew?
Oh, it's good. We had to take all the crayons and put them into my daughter's little plastic cases and stuff. There's a child safety lock on them, and sometimes I struggle trying to open it, in case I want a snack. So
yeah. And Christmas is a big time for those 64 packs of crayons. Like, it can get tough to resist.
It's gotta be the Crayola brand. I mean, that off-brand stuff, I can't have that anymore. So
yeah. So Andrew, like, let's go from like a hunting side of this. So like, as a kid growing up, did you grow up hunting? Was that like a big part of your life, before you joined the Marine Corps?
So, I mean, like most kids, you get to that age and you're like, hey, I want a BB gun. And lo and behold, I had my old Red Ryder, and I was shooting tons of pop cans and beer cans with it. And, occasionally I would be outside and, I would shoot at a bird or something like that was flying by. And, my dad would always try to yell at me. He's like, oh, if you kill it, you eat it. My dad wasn't really a big hunter, growing up. His, my grandpa, but his dad passed away while my dad was at a very, very young age. And, my grandpa was really big into upland bird hunting. And my dad just never really kind of took that torch on with it. But he was big into the outdoors in general, really heavy with Boy Scouts. And he got me into the outdoors at a very young age, just, camping, hiking, just survival stuff. And it wasn't until when my cousin, when she got married, her husband, he came and was like, "Hey, how old are you?" I'm like, 11. Oh, I was 10. I think I was 10 at the time. And he's like, "You into hunting?" I said, "No." And he's like, "Well, do you want to? I can get, So I was like, "Sure." And I signed up for hunter safety, and then went to a yard sale, picked up, I can't even tell what the brand. It was, I think it was like a $20 bow. It had 3 pins on it. I mean, the aluminum shaft arrows. So, I mean, this was a garage sale bow. That was my first bow I ever had. And I got into deer hunting when I was 12 years old. And it's kind of crazy when I look back at that, because I never had any hunting experience, and my cousin just told me, "Yeah, get up in the tree stand, sit there, don't talk, be quiet." And I'm thinking like, okay, he's gonna take me out and be next to me or something like that. No, no, it was I hit the ground running. He was like, "There's a tree." And I looked at him, and he's like, "Climb up the tree, put your safety harness on, bring your bow up, put your arrow in, clip in your release, and wait." And I'm like, "Okay." So I did all that. I had the arrow knocked. I had, my release clipped in, and I'm sitting up there, and I was wearing just an old pair of my dad's. My dad was, he was in the Navy, but then joined the National Guard. So I had some of his old Army fatigues, and I'm out there freezing my butt off because all I had on was like a sweatpants and a sweatshirt with those fatigues on over top of it. 12-year-old sitting up in a tree stand by myself, just shaking just because of how cold it was, unlike what we're having right now in Michigan. But that kind of is what started my hunting. Like I said, 12 years old. I didn't kill my first deer until I was 14. Opening day of rifle season, because back then you had to be 14 to legally hunt with a rifle. And I had some does that came running by, and back when, we could bait, but again, it was how I was raised, and I didn't start changing up my style of hunting, which I'm sure we'll get into later. Michigan, hey, we hunted over bait. I never was really taught how to do the scouting part until I got older, but this deer stopped, and I had a single shot 243. I picked it up, put it right through the window, and crosshairs right on the bed box, and I pulled the trigger, took off running, ran about, I'd say maybe 40 yards, and I saw it keel over. And I remember walking on, my heart's pounding. And as I'm walking up to what I thought was a doe, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I get up to it, and there's these nice little bumps on top of its head. So my first ever deer was, unfortunately, it was a button buck. But, as a 14-year-old kid, I mean, I was on cloud nine. I mean, I killed my first deer, and, that kind of got the rest of my career set for, deer hunting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having this conversation with my wife about like, I took my daughter out this year. She's been hunting a couple times, but this was the first year she was behind the gun, and she ended up killing a spike, and really cool experience. Got to video the whole thing. And my wife was asking me about like my first, hunting experiences. And it was pretty similar to like what you just outlined there with the, just, I had no sticks or anything. There was, maybe I had a couple like screw in steps and like climbed up a tree, hung my tree stand. And I don't know if you were of the age, but the safety harnesses used to just be a belt. So it was like a loop that went around the tree, just went around your waist. Yep.
Put your arms up like this, you fall like there.
Yep. And, my first deer hunt, I actually missed a deer maybe twice. I know I missed at least once straight down. But then with a rifle, 14 years old, same thing. But my dad just said, sit here on the ground, like just sit here. And I ended up shooting a spike that was, I mean, I think you could have tagged it with with a doe permit. Like it was, but they were bone, you know, little tiny ones. And, you know, then that night I ended up shooting a doe. But same thing, you know, there was nobody there telling me to, you know, wait or be quiet or like, this is be a
Hmm.
good shot. It's just like, here you go. Stay here. It's just different. And I think, you know, the way that it is today with the youth hunt and being able to, you know, as much as I don't like, you know, some of the things around the youth hunt where, you know, dad does all the work and the kids just sit out there and shoot a 140 and it changes their perspective maybe. But the mentoring aspect of it, I think is a lot, it's almost required, in some degree because, you know, my daughter, as much as she spent time in the woods, like that she couldn't go out there and find anything herself or do anything. So, you know, being around it, she kind of has to take something away from it. And so from there, from 14 to when you went into the Marine Corps, like, were you hunting every year? Was it like become like a passion of yours, or was it kind of like the Michigan thing where it was just like, it's November 15th, it's a holiday, we go out for opening weekend and then come back?
No, so I actually never had a deer camp. Like I said, when my cousin, she was married, I still call him my cousin because, you know, he's family to me. And he, you know, he lived in Beaverton, Michigan, and, you know, from Bay City to Beaverton, you know, 45-minute drive. So weekends I would go out. You know, I was October 1st, I was always up in a tree stand somewhere, and November 15th, you know, if I didn't kill anything with my bow, which I never did until I got a little bit more older. But no, I deer hunted, you know, every year. You know, I always started off with my bow and then transitioned to the rifle, and then, you know, if nothing happened then, you know, muzzle loader. I also got into waterfowl hunting, and that's a huge passion of mine too. Had a couple friends, you know, when I was, you know, same thing, young age, you know, their dad was a big waterfowl hunter, so they would take us out and stuff. And so, I mean, I just, you know, I got bit by the outdoor bug, and, you know, it just kept growing. And I wanted to learn more. And just as I started to kind of understand the concept of, you know, what the rut is and, you know, the scouting aspect, because that's what my cousin, he would put me up in a tree stand, and, you know, then eventually he's like, all right, well, go hang a tree stand. And I'm like, I don't know where to put it. So he would kind of like show me some things. But, you know, we always have a saying in the Marine Corps, and I'm sure other branches have it too, you know, pain retains. You know, if you do something and it hurts, like, hey, fire, you touch it, burn your finger, that's hot. Okay, well, you're going to retain that. You know, it's the same concept. And, you know, I was hunting a tree stand, and he said, well, that's a bad spot for the wind for today to hunt that. I'm like, what do you mean the wind? I mean, you know, there's so much that I didn't learn. And, you know, I kind of feel like I missed out on a lot of awesome hunting opportunities because of the knowledge that I didn't have. But then that ultimately falls back on myself for not taking those steps. And when I started to ask him the questions, he's like, man, it only took you 5 years to finally ask me how to do this stuff. I'm like, oh, geez, okay, you know. But deer, duck, and stuff until I, you know, joined the Marine Corps, which that led up to 2005 when I actually enlisted into the United States Marine Corps.
And so what was that the decision for you? And then what was like your MOS and your journey in the Marines?
The decision to join.
Well, yeah. So the decision to join, and then did you just did your score dictate like your MOS, or were you like me and you were
Oh
just like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I scored a 99 on the ASVAB. Like, I want to be infantry. Like, I think I would really like to do that.
Yeah. So I always joke and say this, like, our family, we're like the Lieutenant Dans of the world. You know, not that, you know, in every war we died in, but you can trace our family, you know, lineage back to the French and Indian War. We were French voyageurs back then, and we actually fought in the French and Indian War. I mean, my cousin did a big research thing. So, I mean, we fought in almost every major war that the United States was in. So it was just kind of like, I think, like a genetic thing. Like, I mean, my first memories, you can see photos of me as a kid, and I'm wearing, my dad's, or wearing a camouflage uniform saying I'm going to be a soldier. So like my family knew at a very young age that, I was going to be joining the military, and it was just a matter of picking the branch. And, I've said this before in another podcast. I originally wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but I would join the Navy Sea Cadets. I went to this 2 week little buds course, and this one instructor there was like, "Hey, mentally, physically, I know you can handle it." He's like, "There's no doubt in my mind, but what's your plan B?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Well, what if you get hurt, and you get recycled back? What are you going to do? Do you want to be stuck on a ship?" And I'm like, I really thought of that. So when I came home, I was, going in to go talk to the Navy recruiter, and as I was walking in, he was out for lunch or something. And just like good old recruiters, the guy pops his head out in the hallway. "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm here to talk to him." He's like, "For what?" I'm like, "Oh, and then he's like, "Well, what are you trying to do?" I'm like, "Navy SEAL." He's like, "You ever heard of Marine Recon?" I'm like, "What's that?" And here it is, cast out that line. And I'm like, biting onto the hook. And he reeled me into his office, and we sat down and started talking. And he told me about Marine Force Recon. And he's like, "Hey, if something happens and you can't make it, well, you can still be infantry." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I went and took my ASFAB, which I just, whatever, it's an ASFAB, I don't care. Just get it done, get me out of here. It's a stupid test. And didn't realize that it actually meant what jobs you could get. And my first GT score wasn't high enough to actually go recon. So I ended up 0331, became a machine gunner. And I was a machine gunner for about 2 years. I'm sorry, 2 deployments. I was deployed a total of 7 times. I did 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and 2 on Navy ships. And after my second deployment, I was talking with a couple of guys in a scout sniper platoon, and they said, "Hey, we got an indoc, you should try out." And, I said, "Well, my GT score is not high enough to go to school." And they're like, "Oh, dude, there's waivers for everything." So I ended up joining platoon. I mean, past the indoc. Back then we could say indoc, now it's considered verbal hazing. So it was a screener. So passed the indoc, made it to the platoon, trained with them, deployed to Iraq as a pig. That's what they called all the non-hogs. So professionally instructed gunman is what a pig stands for. And then the term hog stands for hunter of gunmen. I can get into a lot more of the history with that, but came back from that deployment, went to school, graduated the Scout Sniper Basic course, became a team leader, and I finished out my career in the Marine Corps as a Marine Scout Sniper, and I took a lot of pride in that. And ultimately, that is kind of what led me really heavy back into archery hunting. So I joined in 2005, and I got forced out in 2018. I had service limitations after 13 years. I got an NJP back in 2008, but hey, what most good Marines did get in trouble. I see all these step and steals. "Oh, I got 2 of them. You're fine." Well, I wasn't fine because the Marine Corps that black-eyed my record. And it didn't matter. Honor graduates out of I don't know how many schools. I mean, letters of recommendation. I mean, I got a sheet that is like a mile long of great accomplishments I had in my career. But the thing that kind of boiled down to was I apparently deployed too many times. My 7 deployments, I didn't do a B billet. I didn't, do what the Marine Corps wanted. I just kept deploying. So once I got honorably, discharged from the Marine Corps, my life hit rock bottom. And I guess this is kind of going to lead into where I think this is going to go. But I had in 2006, I was blown up with our Humvee, and I suffered a traumatic brain injury. And after I got out, between that, having PTSD and the wife, we dealt with 7 miscarriages that led to the birth of our daughter. I mean, my life, I hit rock bottom like hard. And I mean, I was substance abuse with alcohol. And it wasn't until one day I just decided that, I'm gonna go hunt. I went and bought my deer tag, shot my bow a couple dozen times, like, I'm dialed in, let's go. Grabbed it, went out there, and Went out and sat in this tree stand that, I started to kind of learn a little bit about scouting, through YouTube videos and just talking with my friends. So I went out, scouted an area, found a pretty good deer trail, set up my bow. Set up my tree stand, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I look and I can see a doe walking down this trail, and my heart starts racing. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like I'm gonna fling an arrow at her. I was getting all amped up, and as she's walking, all of a sudden it was like the world stopped spinning. Everything got super quiet, besides my tinnitus. But um,
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by overpriced wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I heard that Mint Mobile wireless plans are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they sell wireless service online. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That's mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
it was just at that moment I truly felt at peace for the first time in years. And it's something that I look back on and I realize that the road that I was actually on at that time was a dead end road. And a lot of my brothers that I've known were on that same road. And, we all know the outcome when you hit the dead end. I'm not sure exactly whereabouts on that road I was, but I was definitely on it and I knew I was on it. And it was at that moment that I realized that I needed to change. I needed to do something different in my life. And, to summarize that whole experience right then and there was being in the outdoors saved my life, seeing that doe come walking down that trail, and I just watched her. I didn't even clip in, draw back, nothing. I just watched her. She just walked right in front of me. She did it perfect. And it was just because of the moment I was in that it forever changed my life. And from that day forward, I needed to get on a different road, which, eventually led me to starting my own nonprofit. But before I even started that nonprofit, I helped out a different one for about 4 years. They weren't from Michigan; they were out of state, and had a friend of mine that came to me and he said, "Hey, why don't you start your own nonprofit?" And I started laughing. I got a full-time job, got a one and a, well, my daughter's 2 now, but at the time it was like, I have a year-and-a-half-year old, and I'm like, dude, I have no time to even think, between, moving into a new house, the house projects, having to try to start a nonprofit. But, I started to think on it a little bit, and, I realized that I wasn't getting a lot of support from the community because people that would invest in what I was trying to do, that money went out of state. And, there's a lot of people that really didn't want to pitch in a whole lot of money because, it was just going out of state. So when I started this nonprofit, I started to kind of preach to the community and like, hey, your money is helping support all of our local veterans, all of our local first responders to get them into the outdoors. And, I tell people that testimony I had about how it saved my life. And it really changes people, it kind of pulls on their heartstring a little bit. And, a lot of people then started donating money, and then we started getting a handful of good sponsors, a lot of great support from the community. And, we closed this year. We took out, oh, I think it was 100, and I got the number written down. I think we took out 140 veterans and first responders for our first year. And that's something that I can take a lot of pride in because that was a lot of hard work and, time that I put into trying to set up these trips. Some were a huge success. I had a couple deer hunts that we didn't kill a deer, but at the same time, the the conversations we had in that deer blind with some of those veterans, I could tell that it helped them out, because a lot of them were struggling with stuff. And, it kind of made me realize that, maybe not every trip is meant to be, us, killing a deer. That's just kind of an added bonus. I mean, that camaraderie, that brotherhood that we all had while we were in the service. And then once getting out, to kind of have someone that's a like-minded individual back into your realm again, really, really helped them out. And, afterwards I'm like, hey, sorry, we didn't kill a deer. And they're like, dude, it's not about that, and then just to see the smile on their face and the firm handshake afterwards and just the big thank you, like, you don't understand how bad I needed this. And, I can look right back at them and tell them, like, trust me, like, I do know, because, it saved me.
So in that kind of moment of revelation there, when you were in the deer stand and then moving forward to kind of like where you're at now and what you've seen with these veterans, what do you think it is about hunting or archery that really connects with, people that are dealing with some of the things that veterans and first responders, people with, PTSD and that sort of thing? How do you think the two are connected?
Well, for a lot of it, it's providing that platform for them, like waterfowl hunting. Like, I know it's born in Chronicles, but like, I have the duck boat, I have the decoys, I have the calls and stuff. So literally I can sit there and be like, hey, Adam, all you got to do is bring a shotgun. I'm hoping to be purchasing a shotgun for the nonprofit soon. So, I mean, eventually I can just be like, you don't need nothing. But, duck hunting is really cool because we can sit there and have those conversations in the boat and, bang up some ducks. It's awesome. But at the end of the day, when you really talk about like archery and how powerful archery is, you get that bow and you get those arrows. And a mutual friend of ours, Chris Ham, he had on one of his podcasts, he talked about, I forgot his first name, but Wooten, it was the very first one. He talked about it, and it's so true. I mean, when you get clipped into that release and you clip into that, a loop on the back of that bow, and you draw that bow back and you focus in on that sight. I mean, there's nothing in that world in that moment that can happen that's going to really take you away from that focus. Like, it's an awesome means to an escape, for people to, grab that bow. And, how I kind of mentioned about how, I wasn't a big fan of gun hunting and how I was getting into archery hunting, because it's not a challenge to me anymore, with a rifle. And to be able to sit there with a bow and actually have to put in all that time, all that effort. I mean, the last 3 years, my knowledge has grown tenfold on just deer hunting in general, because it is so much more rewarding when you sit there, you put the time in, you put the hours in, the scouting, trying to figure out the patterns of these deer, where they're bedding at, and then the rut comes around. I mean, that's most of our favorite time of year. And you go and all of a sudden you see that beautiful buck come walking in, and you get that heart race, and you can actually connect with that buck or even with that doe. I mean, it is 10 times more rewarding. And that's something that I want to have these veterans and first responders experience. I want to be able to give them those platforms to get out there and show them, like, hey, here's all the tools that you're going to need. And this is something that you can now focus on. You can sit there if you're, come springtime, you're stressed off. I mean, stressed out. You're stressed out. Okay, well, hey, I remember that seminar, because this 2024 season, we're going to be doing a lot of different seminars where we're going to take, men and women out on the state land and show them how to do some scouting, because then it's a tool that they can use. So when you get stressed, you can sit there and go out into the woods where it's peaceful, where it's quiet, and actually put the time in. And all of a sudden, now you're focused in on that, and you're not worried about the stresses going on at work or in your personal life. And when you get home, you can grab that bow and, if you don't got a place to shoot, you can go to a bowman's club or find some state land and get out there and you can clip into that bow. And, you make that one-time investment with the bow and the arrows, and you can just constantly keep shooting. And it's very therapeutic. And that's something that I want to provide for, all these veterans, first responders, is that therapeuticness of how it can be. I mean, it's like golf. I mean, you could sit there and, you can drive the ball down the center of the fairway and then you chip it and you slice it, it goes off in the woods, same thing. You can probably send one arrow like, oh man, I'm dialed in. Then your next arrow is like, you flinch, you jerk the trigger. I mean, there's so many mechanics that go into actually shooting, and it's something that you have to get the repetitions in. And it's not like with a handgun, you go buy a box of ammo, 50 rounds later, okay, now I'll go buy another box of ammo. You go and you buy your dozen arrows and you have them. I mean, you can shoot them as long as you take care of them. You can shoot them thousands and thousands of times, those same 12 arrows. So it's a platform that we really want to try to focus in on moving forward, so that, again, we can just reach out to these veterans and first responders and, hook them up maybe with some bows, hook them up with, the arrows, and show them like, hey, this is where you can go shooting at, show them how to hunt, just to basically become a mentor for these individuals, to give them that escape that they desperately need.
So it sounds like the program is relatively new, and in the first year you've taken, well over 100 individuals out. What is the process for that, and what were some of the learning curves that you had to deal with getting into that? Because that seems like a lot, because we've only got so many, so many days of hunting, and all that. That's a lot of guys, a lot of trips.
It is. No, I did do a big golf outing that we did take out 106 veterans, first responders. We fundraised for that, so we provided them for a free day of golf. So I mean, that was a big event that we took out a big number of people on. So that really kind of got my number up there. But all the other trips, it was, man, if you want to talk about a learning curve, I'll tell you what, every trip I learned a lot on. The planning process, because you sit there and it's like, okay, hey, Adam, we're going to plan a deer hunt, a month from now, or 2 months from now, you plan out a trip. I mean, you do a lot of out of state trips. So, I mean, it's like where you plan something like, all right, granted, you guys are planning like a week. I'm planning a day, a weekend, and I have no idea what the weather's going to be like, 3 weeks from now. So on top of me stressing like the week or two leading up to that hunt or that trip, I'm constantly checking the weather, the wind, on top of going out and scouting. And the hard part I had for my first year, for especially the deer hunting, was we don't have actual property yet. I'm hoping one day to find that random person that has a farm field that they're like, or a chunk of property, and they're like, hey, kids don't hunt no more. We don't want it, donate it. Yeah, that'd be great. But I do hope that we can actually get a chunk of property in the future where I do know what the deer are doing. That was the hard part, was a lot of people donated their lands for us to actually get out there to use this season. And the first deer hunt I did, the guy's like, yep, there's deer blind here, just go set up, deer come in, food plot, you're all set. I'm like, okay. So we sat there and I had no idea. I'm like, all right, where's their bedding at? I started running through all my scouting stuff. So I put my faith into a person that owned the property, and it didn't pan out at all. So then the next trip I did, I went out, 3 weeks prior, again, checking cameras, checking trails, I was scouting, and I put in a lot of my personal time into, trying to scout for, that one day. And we got out there and it was a blizzard this year. So we're sitting there, and like the one day we actually got good snow, and ended up just dumping on us. And those deer, they harbored up and they didn't move until the last 30 minutes of light. And they came a totally different direction than I thought. So, the planning process was kind of easy. It's like, hey, we're gonna go deer hunt on November 15th, opening day. All right, cool, got it. And we're gonna go hunt here. But it's the scouting that you have to put in, because I want to make sure every experience that they go on is a good one. And I sit here and I fundraise for a reason. I'm not gonna take these veterans first responders to McDonald's, to go grab lunch. Like, we're gonna go to like a nice restaurant somewhere. We're gonna put you up in a Holiday Inn at the time, because I want to make sure that even if the hunting trip wasn't a total success, where they slept at, with the food they ate, the camaraderie that they had, that, it's a good experience for them. So, I mean, even as we talk now, I'm thinking of, future trips I got coming up and the stuff that I still got to do. My wife's been an absolute blessing in my life, because she is very computer savvy and she has super OCD with like organization. So she has spreadsheets, Excel files, Word documents. I mean, we have so many different templates. Like, I got a new template now, so if everyone decides they want to do something like this in the future, my wife created a template for me where I would sit down and bring my computer, and on the trip I would type notes on, because after these trips are done, we got to do a social media post. So I'm in there typing up, what the weather was like and stuff, where we slept, where we ate, did we like this location, just all these key notes, so that in the future, when I go to plan again, if I'm in the same area, I kind of know the do's and don'ts of, for that particular area, that particular style of trip that we're trying to do.
So how many, we haven't really got into the organization that much. Like, how many people are involved in this? Is it a one man show, or, because it seems like if it is a one man show, that's a huge, undertaking. A couple more guys would really kind of make it a little bit easier.
Yeah. So I have my board. So I have a board, we got a nonprofit, so we have a board, and the president on my board, he's a close friend of mine, and he was Army Special Operations, and he actually kind of helped me and guided me to pick the rest of our board members, and every board member was a strategic pick. And that was the thing, is we didn't want to have a lot of my friends on the board, which the board members are now all my friends. But originally I didn't want that, because then you have, kind of personal, interest at play with stuff. So I have a strong board, but besides my wife that handles all of our social media, emails, she's a graphic designer, so all of our logos, like, she designs all that stuff. So she takes a lot of that stuff off of my plate. But it's a one man show right now. I've been very blessed so far that I've been able to get, excuse me, drinking a Werner, so there it is. Been very blessed that been making a lot of great connections, and it's just crazy how some of them span. A mutual friend of ours too, Shane Browning, he's becoming a close friend of mine, and he's one that we're gonna put on a couple different seminars and clinics, in the Bay City Bowman's Club. We're gonna go out there and set up some shoots and stuff, and he's starting to kind of step up to help out a little bit with a lot of that kind of planning stuff, giving me some good ideas. But it is a lot for me to do by myself. Like I said, I still got the support of my board. They still send me referrals. Hey, call this person. Hey, here's a great idea. Here's something that you should look into. But they're not the ones that are going to sit there and make that phone call to that corporation to get that check to get donated to us. They're like, hey, here's the guy, call and talk to him. You're like, we're not going to do it for you. This is your organization. If you want this to succeed, you got to start proving it to us or showing us like how bad you want it. And ultimately that's what it's been. I mean, it's been a very hard grind for us, and for me personally, mentally and physically, trying to do everything. Again, I'm still trying to look into trying to get some, I'm hoping to get some brand ambassadors in the near future that can, take that burden off of my plate on these trips. But a big thing is with these trips, I do go on these trips, but it's the experience that I've had. It's a story that I've had that, I can relate to, these veterans and first responders that, some people just, they can't do that. And that's kind of why my board wants me going on a lot of these trips, because they want me to be the one that connects with these individuals on that personal level. I got a quick story. I could be here for hours telling a whole bunch of them, but just a testimony. It wasn't with my nonprofit. It was the one that I was helping, but it was a deer hunt. And again, I was talking about the stupid weather. We got out there, and I mean, it was like a monsoon. And I told him the day prior, I'm like, hey man, I was trying to get him all excited about the trip, and I'm like, hey, ultimately, I'm gonna tell you, like, I don't think we're gonna see anything. Like, I mean, it is gonna rain. And he's like, I haven't been deer hunting in a very long time. It would be nice just to be out in the woods. I'm like, all right, man, let's go. And I took him out there, and I mean, it was, when I said a monsoon, I mean, it was pouring rain, and we had a ton of wind. And in the back of my head, I'm like, man, I should have grabbed a shotgun and be like, dude, let's go jump in my duck boat. But we sat in that blind, and we had some good conversations, and there was a couple that got real dark and personal. And after one of the conversations we had, he reached in his pocket, and he handed me something, and he had in between his index finger and his thumb was a 9mm bullet. And he's like, hey, I want you to have this. And of course, I'm kind of puzzled because, we're sitting there, bow hunting, and he hands me a bullet. And he's like, I don't think you understand what this bullet is. And, me getting choked up at the time, I said, kind of like I am right now. I'm like, dude, I do, because that bullet was meant for him. He told me that 2 weeks prior to that trip, he was ready to take his life. And I kept reaching out to him like, hey man, I'm trying to get him like excited about this upcoming trip. And he told himself that like, hey, he was going to go on this trip. And it's kind of sad when I say this now, but he's like, he was going to base, his decision off of this trip. And I'm like, I didn't realize at the time, but like looking back, I'm like, we didn't see a deer, we didn't kill anything, but it was that conversation, that camaraderie that we were able to develop in that deer blind that ultimately, that saved his life. And, that's kind of what it comes down to. Not every trip is going to be a success, but, I look back at that. I look back on a couple of those other deer hunts I've had and some of the other fishing trips we've done that weren't a big success, but to see like the smiles on their faces and to kind of tell like that trip made a difference to them. And, that's kind of what it all comes down to. It's not just, all the planning, the hours spent. It's trying to see if you can develop that connection, that relationship with that individual, and see if they are struggling. Our number one, clients we want are, men and women with PTSD. And, you can't always tell if someone has it or not, but, at the end of the day, like they're the ones we want. We want the ones that have that stress and that want to find that escape, and we want to be able to provide it for them.
And so for people out there that are listening who either are suffering with PTSD and they're kind of in this situation, or people who are listening and they say, this might be a good thing for a family member or a friend of mine, what is your process as far as like choosing people for these trips, getting people involved? Because, anytime that you do anything, I'm assuming that there's probably some serious amount of vetting, to a degree, but at the same time, there's going to be people that are trying to, take advantage of anything, right?
Yeah. So we actually, my last board meeting this month, I created a policy that we'll be posting on our website coming up here the first part of January, and it's kind of our vetting process and how we actually go through and select people for it. So it'll be open to the public. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to take Adam because he's my buddy. It's, we do have a process now that we are selecting people, but ultimately, like people that are struggling, like they're always going to be our number ones that we want to try to take out to help. But at the same time, as long as you honorably served our country, apply for these trips. The same thing for first responders. You don't have to be, you know, a combat vet to go on our trips. You don't have to be, a seasoned, first responder. I mean, everyone has everyday stresses, and that's what we want to try to eliminate. We post stuff on our website, and we'll do links on our Facebook page too. Those are pretty active. So if people want to go onto our website, outdoordriven.org. We got upcoming events. We have nothing coming up right now. We're just closing out this year, so don't click on it yet. But so we have kind of a criteria, we'll post, and it's the thing is we want to try to keep like veterans with veterans, first responders with first responders. We will do a trip for law enforcement, firefighter, paramedic, EMS. Like we try to keep them together. The same thing with veterans, because conversations that you and I can have together are going to be different than a conversation I'm going to have with, a paramedic. So we try to keep like-minded people together too with that. And, it all depends on what the trip is, but, everyone can apply for the trip as long as it's, posted for, hey, this trip is for veterans only. Then a veteran or active duty service member will be the one that's going to go on that trip.
Awesome. Now, I guess, you've given an example of a hunt that was, probably more meaningful than any harvest or anything like that. But can you share like any like success stories or anything that really stands out as a cool hunt that you did that was successful?
Unfortunately, deer hunting, not this year for us, but I can tell you this, I have some big plans in the works right now. I actually reached out to a couple different high fence ranches. I'm going to keep them on the down low right now, but I've been emailing back and forth with one. I'm going to be able to go out and do some scouting. And what I told the guy is that I really want to make that an archery hunt. When I was talking about how I really want to dive into heavy with archery, that's what I really want to do. But we've had a couple of really great, successful waterfowl hunts. I'm sure as well as I know, in Michigan, the weather's been atrocious for deer hunting. Warm weather. I mean, it's been rough. But a trip that I did that was a big success was we did a sturgeon fishing trip. And we took out some Gold Star family members, and we took them out sturgeon fishing. And, this one guy was battling this sturgeon for about, I'd say 27 minutes almost. And when that fish finally got in the boat, I mean, this guy, I don't think you could have made him smile any bigger than when he had that fish in that boat. I mean, it was that right there was probably my favorite trip I did, was watching, those Gold Star family members all hook into a dinosaur. I mean, that's a fish of a lifetime for a lot of people. So that was really cool to see that. But like I said, 2024, I would hoping our friendship can keep growing, and, we can try to do another one of these next year. And, I can talk about some big things that, I had planned that actually did work out, that, that is in this lane of, the bow hunting and trying to get out there after some nice deer.
Oh yeah. For us, the bow hunting is, our passion for a lot of the reasons that you outlined there. And probably almost your come to Jesus moment there, by, for anyone who hasn't, been in that situation with deer underneath your tree stand or whatever. There is just a completely different feeling with archery equipment, and that's what we go for. But ultimately, the farther this thing gets down the road, it's about community, and many things like you said about the veterans and the shared experiences and all of that, and that's what we love about it. So it doesn't always have to be, despite what some people may what idealize about the whole thing, is it doesn't always have to be bow hunting all the time if we're if we're making a difference, then that's all we can really hope for. Right. So
Exactly.
for what you're doing there, what, I would hope that if people are this far into the podcast and they're listening, we've opened some eyes, and maybe people are thinking about like, what could we do to help, or how could we, assist Andrew in this, or, if we wanted to donate, or what kind of things do you need? That sort of thing. So from that side of it, if somebody wanted to donate, if someone had a lease that they, leased out every year, and they're like, you know what, I'd like to donate my lease or something, I'd like to offer my lease to them, or equipment or anything like that. Where are you guys at with that? Because, I'm on the board for our Bowman's Club. We're doing a dinner right now, and in the planning stages, and we're talking about like, what do you take for donations? Well, if someone just grabs a whole bunch of dusty stuff out of their basement, that's the equipment that you outlined from that yard sale, like, the gesture's there, but it maybe doesn't necessarily meet the mark that we're kind of striving for. So how do you deal with that kind of stuff? And where are you looking for help?
So obviously, I always start with the big one. I mean, these nonprofits don't run off of my good looks and my long-winded answers that I've been giving you. It comes down to funding. I mean, we do need to always get funding. I'm learning how to do grants right now and stuff, but to sit there and find like that random check that shows up, for whether it's $100 or $1,000. I mean, all that money helps us out with our mission. So I mean, the first thing is always going to be money, but the second thing is like you mentioned about land, property. That's something that I want. Like I said towards the beginning of the podcast, I would love to be able to find a place to call home. I mean, we're out of Bay City, Michigan right now, but I would love to sit there and have a chunk of property that we can call home, that I can actually build a lodge on and have people come to this lodge. So you got that community aspect there, you got that camaraderie, you got that escape that they can come to, and then go out on our property and go hunt. But besides that, I mean, like you said, if someone just has a lease, if they want to, donate the lease, it doesn't have to be for the full season. If people are like, hey, I got a spot here, I'd love you guys to come out and, come kill a deer. Block permits are a huge one. I mean, farmers, if there's any farmers that listen, I had a guy that he said next year he's going to donate 20 block permits to us if he gets them again for, to go out there for does. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. I can fill every one of those. I mean, I got people that never killed deer before. I'll get them out. But equipment, ideally I would love to sit there and say like brand new in the box. But I mean, if someone has like a used bow, but it's a nice bow, it's in good condition, all decked out with everything, like, here you go, all you have to do is just get it tuned up and give it to a veteran. I mean, I will never say no to something that's used, that's in good condition, that can actually get repurposed. But like, you're saying, I had some people like, hey, I got some decoys, like, and they handed me a bag of decoys, and the gesture was there, but I mean, these things had like no paint left on them. I mean, a few of them were shot up. I'm like, hey, thanks, man. The kind of the same concept, but like, tree stands, rifle blinds, all that stuff can go to good use at some point. So, it's, like I said, money, trying to find land, and then, actually nice, good equipment that's serviceable that we can, utilize and give away to someone that's going to be safe. Safety is going to be a huge factor with all that stuff too.
So in all of this, between work, nonprofit, and that thing we take for granted, spending time with family and everything, did you get a chance to hunt at all this year for yourself? Have you been able to go out and have any success?
So I put all my eggs in one basket. I went out to Kansas and I shot a trophy out there. So I was able to get out for 4 days of hunting out there, but actually this Friday is gonna be my first time going out this season for myself for deer hunting. Um, I really didn't have a lot of time. I mean, my wife is she's pregnant right now. You know, we're due in March, so between trying to take care of a 2-year-old and doing all these trips, you know, I really didn't have a lot of personal time for myself to actually, you know, get out there. But, you know, I still look at, you know, excuse me, you know, looking at, hey, even though I did 13 different trips this year and I didn't once get out for myself for fishing or deer hunting yet, you know, it was a huge success, and I loved it. But well, I'm pretty excited about this Friday though. You know, hopefully the weather can hold out and I can get out there. But it's still gonna be great to be able to clip in and hang from my saddle and just be out there in God's country and the peace and quiet, and to have my bow out there and hopefully have the opportunity to, you know, set an arrow.
So I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, because you're not the first scout sniper that we've had on here, to ask you what from that training do you think transitions the best, or like has helped you the most in whether it's, you know, map reading, scouting, thermals, any of that stuff. I mean, you know, wind currents at 1,000 meters are different.
Thermals here. Man, that would make my scouting a million times easier. A lot of it, you know, when it comes down to like the stalking part of it, that was huge. The ability, like you said, map. I mean, you know, yeah, hey, Onyx, I use Onyx, you know, but not sponsored by them. Gotta throw that out there. But to sit there, I can look at a map and get on there and actually try to look at, you know, just the terrain and just seeing what the terrain's like and kind of have a game plan. And, you know, there's some of my most successful hunts I've had so far in the last 2 3 years have been in areas I've never been to, where I was forced to get out there and put boots on the ground and actually scout. I mean, that buck that I killed in Kansas, you know, this guy, he's got permission to hunt 2,100 acres spread out like over like a couple different counties. So I'm like, okay, so you probably scouted a lot of this. He's like, not really. I'm like, oh God. So, you know, I jumped on there. I was looking at the wind, seeing, you know, here's some fields. So a lot of that kind of tied into it. And like I said about the stalking, I mean, that buck, I had him on the ground and I stalked up to a point where I thought he was going to come out at. And lo and behold, he did. And, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that I didn't, you know, get down and actually stalk around a little bit and, you know, try to read the map, look at the terrain, trying to figure out which way he's going to come, I don't think I would have had a chance to kill him. So, you know, those are the kind of the two biggest ones there. And, you know, obviously, you know, go without saying, I mean, you put a rifle in my hands, like, yeah, okay, you know, between me and, well, right now it's shot in a while, but, you know, 800 yards, like I would feel totally confident shooting at, you know, 800 to 1,000 yards with my rifle at a deer, knowing, because I understand the ballistics of that round. I know what it's going to do as long as I can read the good wind. But, you know, that's, like I said, that last one kind of goes without saying. I mean, it's, you know, being a sniper, you know, I'm pretty good with a rifle, but, you know, a lot of people like think like, oh, all you do is shoot. Like, no, it's about, you know, 76% of our job was the scouting and the, you know, reconnaissance surveillance aspect of it. And my patience, that right there, ultimately, I think is a huge one that did tie in. I mean, I know a lot of people in the military could probably say that about having patience, because you can sit there and get fidgety and antsy, but, you know, as long as you can have the willpower to, you know, hold out in that, you know, that cold, the wind, the rain and stuff, I mean, good things can happen.
And then, so what bow are you shooting this year? So what's your bows, arrows, broadheads, all that stuff?
So I can't remember so I got a prime and I absolutely love it. I want to get one of those new ones, but I got a prime. Actually, I just got switched over to Canadi arrows and with a zinger fletching, so I got those on, and I'm in the process of actually switching broadheads. But this year, I currently have on my bow is the Afflictor broadheads. I watched Red Arrow, the guy went down there and he shot a boar right in the shoulder, grabbed that same arrow, put it back in his bow, and then ended up killing a doe with it, and it had passus on both times. I'm like, that's the broadhead for me. And trying to think of what I think I got a Scott's release. Can't remember which model it was, but I bought it. I was down in Colorado, went on an elk hunt, self-guided elk hunt with a buddy of mine, and ended up shooting my eyes is a trophy, but a small 5x5 with my bow. But that's why I'm so hesitant to ever get rid of that bow, because with the cams on it, once I hit that back wall, I can just hold it. And I actually have it on my GoPro. I held that bow at full draw for a minute and 32 seconds before I was able to, release the arrow on that bull elk. And, so I'm it's so hard for me to probably get rid of that bow because of the personal connection I have with it. Those are the tools of the trade that I got. And right now I'm sitting in a trophy line tree saddle. But if anyone from Latitude Outdoors is listening, Michigan brand, I'm trying to get a hold of you. So I'd like to work with you guys.
I might know somebody over there.
Yeah.
So does Chris got you in a HHA site yet, or is it in the mail?
Oh yeah. I got a HSA single pin site, and actually with Shane this week, we're gonna get together and we're gonna try to get it all sighted in. I currently have a 5-pin. I think it's a Trophy Ridge that's on it right now, but I've always wanted to get a single pin. But yeah, Chris with HSA Sports, he hooked it up, and I got a single pin right now. And we've had these I don't think we had this conversation yet about the pros and cons with a single pin versus having multi-pin, and which one you would rather use or not.
Yeah, so for me, since we went to, like, in 2018 when we planned out everything for our first elk hunt out there, we went to multi-pin sliders, and so on one of my bows, I have a HHA. I have their, I want to say it's like their Kingpin, 5-pin slider. And so that goes 20, 30, 40. And then my bottom pin is like 65 or something. Maybe it's a 4-pin. I don't know, but it goes 20, 30, 40. And then my bottom one, I think, is 55. And I can shoot out to like 110 with that. But that way I know, where it's at. And then if that animal were to come running in, you shoot him, or you're set up for 20 or for 30, and then he comes closer or whatever, you can do that where you're not dialing around. I had another Kingpin light that was just a single pin. And actually I shot that little buck right there, in 2018 with my brothers. That was the first year that we all killed on the same day, with archery equipment, which may never happen again. But I missed a buck that was about as big as that one, earlier in the morning, where I ranged him at like 42, set my pin at 40, got the full draw, and then he kept coming and coming and coming, and I shot right over top of him. I cut some hair right off his back. And that didn't deter me from using that sight. And I know exactly what happened, and, but in the moment. And so that's what you're dealing with a single pin. And it can get really tricky using a multi-pin, because with that 20, 30, 40, and then 55 being that sight, the bottom pin bottomed out, where it is, like, I have to dial that sight using my bottom pin as the slider. When it's set up at 20, 30, 40, it's 56. I have to set my tape at 56. So at 56, it's correct. And then when I dial down, the bottom pin is the slider. just like would be like a single pin.
Okay.
And that gets confusing because if like we set that up for my brother-in-law on my old bow, he's got one of my old bows, and he missed a really nice buck at 35 because he dialed the sight to 35 and put the top pin on it instead of putting it at 40 and just shooting him with the bottom pin or the 20, 30, 40 pin. So it can get confusing both ways. So it can happen. It's just, you just have to, just like anything else, you just have to know your equipment and use it and practice. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, because, it's like people always say it's like riding a bicycle. I mean, I had elbow surgery back in towards the end of September, which kind of ruined the beginning part of me trying to get out deer hunting. But, I'm like, oh, it's like riding a bike, and I went out and I started flinging a few arrows, and I was like, all right, cool. I got it dialed back in, but it's the repetition that I didn't have, and the confidence wasn't there. Like when I had that buck that I killed, I had him on the ground at 40 yards, and he was facing straight towards me, and I would have had to have threaded through an opening in a cedar tree, and I'm like, yeah, there ain't no way. Like I didn't have the reps in, and that was kind of a humbling moment for me because, like you said, you got to know your equipment, and I knew I could not make that shot happen, and that's what is leading me towards I need to start practicing more, which is really nice because now it's giving me a great excuse to actually go get a membership at the Bowman's Club. So this wintertime I can actually get out there and, shoot my bow more because, the same thing with being a sniper. I mean, you can sit there, I can throw you on any rifle, and as long as I can read good wind and get the good range on you, you just got to pull the trigger. I mean, yeah, there's little small fundamentals that in between, but it's that repetition with actually, understanding the wind, reading the wind. It's the same thing with deer hunting. I mean, I understand that the arrow's velocity is a lot slower. And I actually, 2 years ago, I missed a nice 10 point with my bow because I ranged him and I didn't really process because when he was walking towards me, he was at 15 yards. So I'm like, oh, dude, it's a chip shot. Like, I got this. And I shot right over his back. But because of how close he was to me and how high I was in the angle, like that really threw the trajectory of my arrow off, on top of me basically being in like this weird position because I was kind of almost being gangster, like had my bow cocked almost on a total 45-degree angle down because that was the only opening I had at him. But I've had a couple humbling moments that made me really realize that you really need to just get those reps in practice. And I figured if I can try to, I don't know about master, but if I can just get that single pin on and just try it out and just see, and then that way I know firsthand whether or not that's for me or not, if I want to switch back to having a multi-pin.
Yeah, you won't have any issues. It's just, and to be honest with you, for everything except hunting, the single pin is king. Like for all the target shooting, because it builds so much confidence. So like if your tape is right and you're like at your Bowman's Club, like our Bowman's Club, you can shoot. I mean, if you shoot from the parking lot, you can shoot to infinity basically, but farther than your bow can handle.
Mm-hmm.
But our range goes from like 10 to 80 or 90, something like that. So you just go up to any one of those, you hit your rangefinder, 70. Okay. Dial it to 70, follow your process and put it in there at 70. I mean, when you're, like this year prior to TAC, like Frank was dropping, and my father-in-law, he's notoriously, Kentucky windage type shooter. Like that ought to do it, and when he's dropping, sub paper plate groups at 70, you're like, oh man, Frank, you're doing really good. A 6-inch group at 70, the bow's on, the tape's on, like there's no excuses. And that's really confidence building. I mean, it's great. But hunting, when that deer's at 43 and then he's at 30 and then, so that's what we didn't want to happen with elk. So that's why we went with a multi-pin slider, and just understanding it. But you're going to like it. Like I said, for everything other than hunting, and in 90% of hunting situations, you're going to be shooting at deer inside of 30. So if you have your pin just set at 25, it's the same as when you were a kid and you had those 3 pins, or you had that 1 20-yard pin and you're like, I got to aim a little higher. I got to aim a little lower. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just like your hold for the wind or whatever, with the rifle shooting. So, but yeah. So for anybody, like I say, as we wrap this up here, that wants to reach out either, to say, to maybe they have a similar story to yours or something like that. If they want to reach out, about their journey, about, the nonprofit, about any ways to help, like what's the best place to get a hold of you or to reach the nonprofit?
So, on our Facebook page and on our website, and the same thing on Instagram too. I mean, if you send a message to any of those on the website, we do have an email that's posted there. We reply fast. I mean, I can be sitting here and having a conversation with you and stuff will pop on my phone. So, I mean, I got my phone with me all the time, especially now that I have a nonprofit. I mean, I never used to answer random phone calls, but I always answer them now because I never know who's calling. But, we got email is, we usually get back within a couple hours, or if not, like, within a day. So those are the best ways to try to reach out to us. It's through Facebook Messenger, the email that's on our website, or if you just wanted to look up me on Facebook personally and send me a message, I'll reply back to that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time tonight, and for everything that you're doing, really, because this isn't like a podcast about like this is Andrew, this is how he's going to help you learn to hunt better necessarily, but he may be able to save somebody in your family or help you out. So thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for this. It's an amazing platform to be on. I listen to you guys all the time. That's where I get a lot of my knowledge from, is listening to you guys on other podcasts. And I just hope that, if someone's listening, that they understand that, if it's you or if you know someone, that they're not alone. I mean, there's thousands of people out there like myself that are trying to help out. And all you got to do is just take that one step and just reach out. And that's usually the hardest thing. I mean, big macho guys like, I'll keep it tucked up inside. And then you keep it tucked up until, you hit that breaking point. But, even if you have someone that that, is just struggling and they won't reach out on their own, if you're comfortable, give them my contact information or give me theirs. I'll reach out to them personally, and, we can do stuff together that doesn't have to be, all over social media. People just need to understand that our mission is just to help. So, just have people just reach out. Ultimately, that's what we need.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, Adam. Have a great one.